Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and Accio headphones, and let the magic begin.
Apostasy by Deydralinne. Chapter 36, Unexpected Consequences. So the Knott family is the reason our family has a curse? Astoria asked, teary-eyed, tugging at the tissue between her hands as they all crowded around the dining table at the chateau. Well, almost all of them. Yes, Hermione nodded hesitantly. I don't have much more information than that. Astoria nodded, her glossy eyes seeking out Hermione's nervously. But you still can't cure it, can you? Hermione wanted to reassure the blonde that she could. She felt confident that she could. But she was also painfully aware that things like this take time, and what Hermione did not need was the added pressure of everyone's watchful eyes. No hope was better than false hope, and if, for some reason, Hermione couldn't figure out an answer in time, then she didn't want to face everyone's disappointment. Maybe that made her a coward, but it didn't stop her from shaking her head. I don't think so, Tor. I can maybe prolong it, but I don't even know how far back this goes. Astoria nodded in a somber acceptance. Okay, that's okay. Tears welled in the witch's eyes again. Perhaps this is something that you can work on with Daphne for the next generation. What next generation story? You're dying, and I'm gay. It's just us, Daphne exclaimed suddenly. Astoria tilted her head and thought, I've been thinking about that. I always said that I didn't want children because I didn't want to pass this down to them. But with Hermione's potions, they could lead relatively normal lives, maybe even long lives, because they would be able to start their potions before the damage is done. I don't see a reason not to now. I would like Theo to have someone, and I mean someone connecting him and me in a different way than you guys do. He will need it. He needs someone who will need him to be able to keep his shit together. Astoria let one sob fall free before she sniffed and straightened her shoulders. Hermione took in the look of disapproval on Daphne's face and slipped quietly from the seat, nodding at the others to head to the sitting room and give the sisters some space to discuss it privately. She slipped outside and made her way towards the shed. She had seen Theo slip off this way earlier and knew it was simply a matter of him needing a moment. Theo was on the floor leaning against the far wall, tears running down his cheeks that he was trying to angrily swipe away when he entered the shed. Most of the ingredients needed for Astoria's special potion had been rebought and sat waiting at the counter. The only absent thing was the prickly pear. Do you want to talk about it? Hermione asked softly, crouching down and sitting opposite him, her back to the island bench in the middle of the room. No, he was a huge piece of shit. Theo managed to get out around little gasps, resting his arm on the knee of his leg that sat upright. He seemed annoyed to be crying and upset in the first place, but Hermione knew and understood that a lot had happened tonight. Hermione nodded. Are you crying because you're pissed off or because you're upset that I killed your dad? Because I'm pissed off and upset. I don't know, okay? I don't fucking know. The guy was an asshole and deserved to die. He tried to kill you. He tried to kill me and probably knew for years that our family is the reason Astoria's dying. All the times I could have killed him myself, but he was my dad. And tonight was a lot. Like, what the fuck, some warning would have been nice. Theo snapped through sobs. You're right. I'm sorry. I should have given you all a heads up, Hermione said. She should have. She wasn't entirely sure why she hadn't. She had tried to justify it by saying to herself that if Ginny or Draco knew, they would have let their emotions get the best of them. Tried to tell herself she didn't want to have to make Theo choose, but really it came down to her just wanting a little piece of justice for herself. It was selfish, and she blindsided everyone with it. Theo smacked his head against the wall lightly a few times while tears continued to fall. Do you think we can fix it? With Story, I mean. Hermione sighed heavily. I told her that I don't know. Maybe not. Guilt twisted in her stomach. She knew she was doing him a kindness by telling him that, but it didn't make her feel any better watching the wave of grief pass over her friend's face. Is she okay? Theo whispered with a sad nod. Hermione shrugged. She and Daphne were having a private conversation. I left them to it. I'm sorry I killed your dad, Hermione shrugged with a half-hearted smile. Theo scoffed a laugh and shook his head. I'm sorry he tried to kill you. Theo looked at her, and some of the glints of happiness started to return. Hermione giggled, and soon they both laughed loudly at how ridiculous the situation was. Because it was, wasn't it? What the hell had this life become, really? Harry Potter was dead. She was helping Tom and plotting to kill a family members left and right and center. The door opened, and Ginny slipped in with a bottle of tequila. Thought you could use this, she said, extending the bottle to him. Theo nodded and accepted it with a grin. Thanks, Red. So, where to from here, Mai? Any more hidden tricks up your sleeve? Hermione tapped the tip of her nose with her finger and giggled. Ginny snickered. Well, can I make a request, since we seem to be killing family members at the moment? I would like Ron taken out too, please. Hermione knew that despite Ginny's joking demeanor, she was serious. Hermione nodded. Kingsley too, she added. The shed door flew open with a bang, startling her awake. She must have dozed off at some point during Theo and Ginny's insane, drunken ramblings. Theo, Hermione, get in here right now. The panic in Pansy's voice was enough to sink her stomach like lead. Ginny, wide-eyed, scrambled up with the two of them despite her presence not being demanded. The sprint back to the house was long enough for the anxiety and the fear to take over. What had happened? They all froze as they reached the French doors leading to the kitchen. There was so much blood. What the? Hermione frowned, unable to absorb it all. Astoria, she said she felt ill. Apparently, she stood to go to her room, but it was too late. It's not normally this bad. Pansy rushed through her explanation as everyone came to again and trotted to keep up as they headed toward the hospital room. Smears of blood were everywhere. Streaks along the walls, a slash here and there on the floor, but all of it was shiny under the lights overhead. Hermione's chest tightened as she observed each angry red spot. There was too much blood. Even with the aid of blood replenishing potions, this was extreme. It hadn't been this bad last time. She entered the room and saw Tor unconscious on the bed on her side. Daphne crouched beside her, sobbing and stroking her hair, whispering unheard pleas into her little sister's ear. Draco was pouring blood-replenishing potions into her, only for her to throw it up violently seconds later. His hands were shaking, and he was as pale as she was. Tor, Theo roared and skidded to her side. It was the purest form of agony that passed over his face. Hermione shook her head and tried to slow her heart that was now hammering in her chest, at least long enough to cast the diagnostics charm. Everyone in the room froze and looked at the colors and numbers on the screen. Half of them were black or approaching 0. This was beyond what any of them were capable of. This was too far gone. Astoria was dying. Not in 6 months, not in 3 years, now. No, Theo sobbed. We need to get her to the hospital now, Hermione ordered. All eyes turned her way, but no one seemed to move. What are you doing? Move, Hermione snapped. Tor hates hospitals, Daphne whispered. Hermione glared at her and gave her a disbelieving look. Well, it won't fucking matter much if she's dead, will it? Was this normal? Was this how bad it usually was? Had Astoria just had a few good weeks in a row with an odd hiccup in amongst it? No. Pansy had said it wasn't. Blaise was the first to follow her orders, and Theo helped to levitate her. Ginny, go get the flow ready, Hermione whispered, and the redhead ran off immediately. No one had changed. They were all still in clothes that they attended dinner in. Even in his fully black ensemble, Draco's shirt was soaked in glistening blood. The bottom of Pansy's dress had swept through some of the mess at some stage because she left streaks of it across the floor. Was this Hermione's fault? Had Astoria reacted so badly because of the potion? Guilt weighed down on her, suffocating her. Was this the cost of Hermione's potion making it easier last time? The knowledge that the reason Astoria had no potions currently was because of her felt like an extra kick in the gut. If Tiberius hadn't sent... Tiberius, she whispered to herself. Something about the fact that Tiberius's death coincided with the same evening that this was happening scratched a part of her brain. Blaise. She caught his arms as she walked down the hall toward the flow. I need you to release the contract. It's impractical in the current situation to have 2 bodyguards at all times, she exclaimed in a hurry. Beside her, Blaze nodded. Consider it done. The healers at Sequanis took one look at Astoria and pressed forward to her. One healer tried to stop Hermione from entering the room, but Hermione just rolled her eyes and shoved past her anyway. She has a blood curse. You need to put her into a medically induced coma, put in an IV with a continuous feed of blood replenishing potions. You will need a team, someone to focus on each of her other organs. If you let her die, I will personally see to it that you are all dead by sunrise. Do I make myself clear? Hermione commanded the room. You can't just come in here and make threats on our lives. The healer she had just ignored earlier argued. Perhaps not, but this woman has top-level priority. Do as Miss Granger says, on my orders. A voice from the doorway brought her instant relief. The healers in the room all jumped in surprise and scrambled to do what she had told them, sending out summons to more healers in the hospital. Hermione spun and stepped forward to wrap her arms around the man. Ren, thank you. Hermione smiled softly. How did you... Miss Sabini came and fetched me. I was still in with Louis. Of course she would have. Ginny knew the wizard's fondness for her. How is he? She asked hopefully. Renaud's eyes softened at her. Alive, thanks to you. The French minister eyed the healers in the room cautiously. He had a few infected wounds, several broken ribs, a cold which caused an infection in his lungs. He was dehydrated and showing early signs of sepsis, but he will be okay. He's sleeping at the moment. He told me I needed to make a national holiday in your honor. He thought he was dead. I would be lying if I said I hadn't thought the same. Renaud swallowed thickly, eyeing the healers again before subtly indicating to the exit. Theo was pacing the room, one corner of his silver vest stained in his wife's blood, his hands anxiously running through his hair. They all jumped when they saw her, but she had nothing to tell them. I don't know. Sorry. Renaud gave the order to do as I said, but I don't know if that changes anything, she explained delicately. It isn't looking good. I don't even have medical training, and I can see that. I need to go. To both your estates and yours, she indicated to Daphne and Theo. I get you can't leave her. I'll take you, Pansy offered. Hermione nodded her thanks and stepped away from the group, taking Renaud with her. She could feel Draco's eyes burning into the back of her, but it felt more protective than jealousy-fueled now. They didn't go far, just far enough to talk in private. I'm sorry that it took us so long. We had some issues of our own arise. Ren hummed and eyed the group behind her. Yes, your friend Ginny explained in a very brief detail that a hit had been taken out on you two by your old order team. Hermione exhaled deeply and rubbed at her face. I nearly died. Jin was kidnapped and things were a mess, but that's not the point. I want to apologize that it took us so long to get to him. Renaud held up his hand in silence. Absolutely not, Hermione. You saved him. Hermione nodded. She wouldn't ask why he had been taken or what he had been working on that had led to it in the first place. He had respected her privacy enough to have allowed her the same courtesy when they had first met. And oddly enough, she found it easy to trust him. His soul felt like an old, familiar friend. I know you have already done me a favor by pulling rank tonight, Hermione sighed. Whatever you need. He shook his head in reassurance. I was just hoping that if it comes to your attention, the whereabouts of an order safe house in France, or more importantly, if you're anything about Kingsley Shacklebolt or Ronald Weasley, I will see what I can do. I won't pry, but I hope that whatever Louis was doing was successful for you. And I hope he is okay. Can I come by and say hi later? Renaud chuckled. Of course you can. He would like that. He's been wanting to thank you personally. Okay, I'll come by later then. Hermione glanced over her shoulder and saw Ginny reappeared out of the flow with a bundle of what looked like clothing in her arms. Thank you again for your help with Astoria. I should get going. I have a lot of research to do. Renaud's hand came to rest on her upper arm, pulling her attention back to him. I trust that if anyone can figure it out, it will be you. She smiled softly. I think you think too highly of me, Ren, she said before giving him a one-armed hug and slipping off toward the group once more. Ginny pressed a baggy shirt and some leggings into her hands when she reapproached. Pansy had already changed and looked more casual than Hermione was used to seeing her. She tried to think of an instance in which she had seen Pansy wearing track pants, but came up short. Ready? Draco grabbed Hermione's hand and pulled her into him. his arms folding around her, a blanket of his comforting scents calming her nerves that felt fried. His lips coming down and pressing against hers. "Don't be reckless," he said in a way that sounded like a warning. The way that his eyes locked with Pansy's behind her confirmed it was. "Me? Never," she joked before following Pansy to the flow. It was clear as soon as they stepped through why. Knot Manor was dark and ominous and drenched in dark energy that protested her very presence.